Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to contain my review of the latest summon showcase, a Clawful Caper, which makes its return from New Year's of this year. This summon showcase features 3 5-star adventurers, Nobunaga, Mitsuhide, and Ieyasu, 2 5-star dragons, Marishiten and Daikokuten, as well as 3 4-star adventurers, which it's great to see on a summon showcase, Addis, Sazanka, and Chitose. So this showcase, with it coming back from New Year's, is seasonal, it is limited time. These adventurers are not part of the permanent summoning pool, and that would normally mean I would typically encourage players to summon, since if you really want these characters, this is going to be probably your best chance for quite a while to pick them up. However, we're in an environment where a lot of us are drained from the anniversary last month. We summoned all out. Many of us have also noticed that the summoning income doesn't appear to be as high as it used to be before the anniversary, and I think we have to be a lot more careful with our summoning decisions going forward. I would say we still need a few more data points as far as the summoning income, mainly because there is a collaboration this month, so it's possible some of this month's summoning revenue is going to come through that collaboration. If we see that has low Wyrmite and low vouchers as well, well, I think it's a pretty clear indication that we are in a lower summoning income world here forward. But I am still waiting to see on that. I'm not sure. However, I have seen a lot of concerns raised about the lack of summoning resources, so I want to acknowledge that as a reason you might not be able to or want to summon on this showcase. Now, if you weren't playing during New Year's of this year, these characters are likely to be brand new to you. This event that's rerunning concurrently, also called a Clawful Caper, is likely to be brand new to you. And I'm going to go ahead and collect here. I didn't collect any of my endeavors from just, playing through the main part of the event, so let's see how much Wyrmite we get. Of course, I also did the Nightmare difficulty, don't forget to do that. So I have some grand bounties to collect here. But it looks like about 325 Wyrmite from playing the event and just completing the endeavors for each quest. Let's accept that. And now let's look at the dailies. This is a concern that players have raised. For some reason, they forgot to include, and I say forgot generously, they forgot to include a summoning voucher here. There's also no Wyrmite here. Instead, for clearing all the daily endeavors, you get 50,000 rupees, which is really insignificant. If you're not aware, you can use Wyrmite to refresh your stamina, and the amount of stamina you can refresh, you could easily get millions of rupees with the small amount of Wyrmite they used to give. So yeah, this is pretty paltry, pretty abysmal right now. Let's accept it. There's also like some additional gold crystals, which, okay. And here, in terms of these rewards, one nice thing as a returning player, at least these epithets are going to give me Wyrmite. That's one thing I appreciate about having played this before. And yeah, there's some cute stickers that they've added, but on net, it does seem like the summoning income is genuinely been reduced rather significantly. So we got about a total of 500 Wyrmite so far. We're going to get some more by playing through the event, obviously. But let me go into the event page as well. And the reason I said that generously is like, if they changed this graphic to make you excited about 50k rupees, like they obviously intentionally removed the summoning ticket, right? Because somebody had to work on changing this graphic. Anyway, I don't want to see that again, so let's close out of that. I'm going to discuss the Wyrmite income situation more toward the end of this video because I think it's pertinent to whether or not you should summon. That's why I mentioned it now, but I also think it kind of deserves its own conversation outside of the discussion of the banner, so I'll save that for the end, and if you want to skip ahead and hear more about that as opposed to the characters on this banner, feel free to do so. There will be timestamps. But anyway, let's talk about what's actually on the summon showcase if you do have the luxury of having the summoning resources to decide to potentially summon on this. And I mentioned who's here, who's available. One of the nice things about this is there are 4 stars available that you might want to pick up. But I will say, this showcase, there's really only a couple of things, probably about 3 things that are particularly meta relevant, with a few that are a little bit lesser in importance. So let me start off by talking about the Light Dragon Daikokuten. Daikokuten is a very powerful light dragon. It's good on characters who can maintain a combo, but now that Light has access to tier 2 Agito weapons, most characters can maintain a combo relatively easily, and certain weapon types like bows and manacasters can pick up a combo even if they drop off. They can accumulate a combo afterward fairly rapidly. So Daikokuten, excellent dragon, great dragon form, good skill, which creates an attack rate zone. That's one reason you might want to summon on this showcase. If you don't have Gala Thor, Daikokuten is probably something you should consider pulling for. And in fact, Daikokuten, in a lot of cases, is probably going to be a little bit better than Gala Thor, at least if you're actually shapeshifting into Daikokuten. So they're pretty close in power level as far as dragons go. You could wait for a Gala remix to actually pick up Gala Thor because he hasn't appeared on one yet. But if you're interested in some of these other characters, since they're limited time and everything, and you don't have that strong light dragon, I would actually strongly consider Daikokuten here. That's reason number one. Reason number two, Nobunaga is a pretty powerful flame adventurer. Her role a little bit diminished as of a recent update with the mana spirals. So let me talk about what makes Nobunaga special. Nobunaga is one of the few characters in the game who has access to a persistent source of Dispel. Many characters have Dispel, but it has to be charged up in some way. You only get it once per skill you use, or maybe it's on a 4-strike, but you only charge up that 4-strike after you've used one of your skills, something like that. Well, with Nobunaga, as long as you have a 15-hit combo, I believe, well, you have permanent access to Dispel by using her 4-strike. That is pretty significant. Not many characters can do that. The other characters who can do that are Valentine's Hildegard, as of the recent Mana Spiral. She's still not particularly desirable for, say, auto comps, but that does set her apart. It might mean Valentine's Hildegard has a special role to play in Legend Volk. We'll have to wait and see on that. And it opens her up to where she can help you clear Master Kayan. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but Valentine's Hildegard is one of them, Nobunaga is one of them, the other two are in Shadow, and it's Belina and Grace. Grace, like Valentine's Hildegard, has a Dispel on her 4-strike, meaning even if you get locked out of using skills, you can rely upon that 4-strike to dispel the enemy. And I talk about Kayan because that's where this is relevant. His buffs are the ones that are the most frustrating that you have to deal with immediately or you'll suffer some punishment. In particular, Master Difficulty of Kayan. You need a couple buffs just to get through his shields. In the Supreme Spears phase, you have to dispel anytime he accidentally gets a spear on him. And for solo in particular, it's hard to do unless you have one of these 4 characters. If you have any of these 4 characters, you can continuously dispel Kayan, and that's going to make your life a lot easier. So when I look at Nobunaga, she might have some applications in Legend Volk. If Valentine's Hildegard is likely to see use there, certainly Nobunaga probably likely to see use for similar reasons, right? Because they both can dispel very frequently. But overall, I would say like if you have any of those 4, that is going to be enough for you to break into Master Kayan solo and clear that for your first clear. Generally speaking, from then on you can do co-op to clear that, but for that first solo clear and the endeavors associated with that, I do think those 4 characters are your best options. So that's one reason you might want Nobunaga. Definitely secondary reason compared to Daikokuten. She's also just a strong flame adventurer. And of course her partner, Mitsuhide here, as seen in the Worm Clan duo artwork, which, by the way, where are the limited time worm prints? Why aren't those back? I would love to see those in the shop, but sadly they are also forgotten along with our Wyrmite. In any case, Mitsuhide, Nobunaga, love the relationship, but Mitsuhide is a light dagger. Third reason you might want to consider pulling on the showcase, in my opinion. She's a pretty strong light adventurer, not the strongest. She might get power crept if Floor gets a mana spiral before her. Floor is another powerful light dagger. And for Tartarus, when you're soloing it, I do find it's helpful to have one strong light melee. A lot of people are already going to have invested into Gala Yuden or other characters for that role, so if you already have some other light melee that you're using, like Gala Luca or Gala Yuden or whoever, in that case I think Mitsuhide is a little bit less necessary for you. It's going to make your solo runs more chaotic because you can't as consistently bait some of the attacks to exactly where you want them. Some of your AI melee are going to steal that bait from you. But she's pretty strong on her own, so that's one thing. The other thing is, as a backliner, she has the highest amount of combo time plus critical rate. Fritz provides the same combination of effects, but his combo time that he gives is going to be lower because he's a 4-star on his Chain Co ability. So that mainly is relevant at this point for Gala Xena, and I'm even not sure if it's relevant for her. Most other light adventurers can keep a combo without having a combo time character in the back, because the new Agito weapons from Tartarus, after they're refined, get the combo time ability. So yeah, only the characters that really have to charge up a long 4-strike have the risk of breaking combo. And even then, like, you could just run another character on her, on the backline for Gala Xena, for example. If you don't have Mitsuhide and you don't want to invest in Fritz, you could just like run a Blade Co ability on her or something, and it wouldn't be the worst case scenario. Essentially, all that would mean is instead of using a Flurry Strength Wyrmprint, you probably want to use like a full HP equal Strength Wyrmprint or HP 70% equal Strength Wyrmprint. Certainly going to be a little bit diminished, but it's not really the end of the world, and Gala Xena is mostly there for safety and runs to begin with. So yeah, that's why that's my third consideration on this. Otherwise, when I look at these characters, Ieyasu, really just not all that anymore. The most notable thing about him, Blade Co ability with the Dragon Haste, Chain Co ability, that is still unique to him, and as a 5-star, it's the highest amount possible. It is nice for characters like Forte that want to be ramping into dragons rapidly, or characters like Lathna, and maybe even Audric. It's a good co-ability, Chain Co ability combination, and it was one of the considerations as far as dream summoning, because Ieyasu is also limited and just a popular character. But I don't think that you have to have Ieyasu to do some of those strategies, and for solo, auto, co-op, Ieyasu is nowhere to be found right now. And same would be true of Addis. Addis also doesn't really have any Chain Co ability action. He's just a regular Blade with Poison and Bleed. A fun character to play, certainly, but he really is nowhere to be found in Ciela at all. Sazanka, likewise. Bleed has kind of seen its heyday in Dragalia Lost. It's really not that widely used anymore. And Addis and Sazanka, in contrast to Ieyasu, don't have access to a mana spiral yet either. Sazanka's a little bit more interesting because she has some stuff like Gauge Accelerator, Sleeping Punisher, and she can cause sleep on her 4-strikes. You can do shenanigans with her with sleep and things like that, but it's really a low chance of causing sleep on most enemies, because most enemies have 99% sleep res, and she has a 100% chance to cause sleep, so it's only like a 1% chance to actually cause sleep with her. So yeah, none of those characters really stand out. Chitose is used in some auto comps. Chitose as a light buffer, kind of okay in some of the standard Tartarus auto comps. Tartarus at this stage is it's so balanced toward co-op. Well, co-op compared to auto, manual solo is totally fine. You can do that, but like the auto is very unfavorable for that. So for me, Tartarus, I just commit, is one of those Agito fights that I'm just going to prefer to do in co-op, similar to Volk for the most part. So whether you want to invest into Chitose just to set up for that purpose, I'm a little dubious it's worth it. And then finally, Marishiten. Marishiten completely outclassed and power crept as a dragon. The one application was maybe like having a really big critical hit with Marishiten's bleed stacks or something like that, maybe with Audric, but like at this point we have 80% strength dragons, Marishiten giving only 60%. She's just not what she used to be. So overall, my main 3 reasons here: Daikokuten, Nobunaga, Mitsuhide, those are your considerations. And here is the question, here's the context about whether or not you should summon. When these characters come back in New Year 2021, are they actually going to be at an appearance rate up? Or are they just going to be randomly on the banner like the Halloween characters were on Spooky Melsa and Spooky Akasha's Gala remix that only lasted 3 days? Are they going to be like that, where they're just thrown in the pool with whatever the new New Year's characters are? And we have strong hints about at least who 2 of them might be in previous events as part of the lore. So when those characters appear, they're probably going to have an appearance rate up. There'll probably be an accompanying dragon to continue the Zodiac theme. And are they actually going to go through the trouble of making all of these adventurers also on a raid up? I think they might not, because it's just so many. So I feel like what's likely to happen is either they would split this showcase off if they decide to bring it back, or they'll put these characters in the pool for that New Year's showcase, but they will not have an appearance rate up. So the only way you would get these is if you actually sparked for them, or you just got lucky enough to randomly get them. So that's my consideration on this showcase, is like, are you willing to hedge on thinking that the next New Year showcase will still have some of these? If it has, let's say you don't have any of them, right? And you want all of them. Well, it might be better to wait until New Year's if all of them are still at an appearance rate up, plus you get 2 new characters on there, a new dragon on there, then that showcase starts to look kind of better for you than this showcase. You could pick up some other new stuff along the way. But if you wait until New Year's and we get that showcase for 2021, Year of the Ox, and these characters are not at a rate up, you really can't count on getting these characters. I think we saw that with Halloween Lowen. People were going crazy trying to get Halloween Lowen. A lot of people failed to get him who weren't able to accumulate a spark. And even if you could, it would feel pretty bad sparking for a Halloween Lowen after doing 300 summons. So I think that's the dilemma here, is do you go for it now when you know they're on a rate up, or do you risk the chance that maybe they'll also be on a rate up in January 2021 when the next New Year's characters come, and on that banner you could get everything, it's more comprehensive? I really don't know. That's kind of a judgment call that you have to make. My gut feeling is there's too many characters. If these come back, they're not going to get an appearance rate up. They're probably just going to be things you would have to dream summon for. And we have kind of seen a pattern where a banner will rerun once, like the Halloween banner reran, Halloween Fantasia 2 reran over the summer. And then when we got a Gala remix with new Halloween characters, they were like, you've had 2 chances, we're just going to throw them in the pool. If you get them, good for you, but like, they've been around before. You've had a chance to get them. So we could be headed there with this New Year's. There's just so many characters at this point. Okay, I think that's really all I want to say about this Summon Showcase and the individual characters. I'm not going to do the usual thing of going through the kits of all these characters. They're kind of interesting. There's some standard stuff like Punisher. The 2 lead characters from 2020 had Flurry Strength, so they want to be keeping up combos. Both have combo time as a Chainco ability. That's also a nice aspect of Nobunaga, by the way, is just as a blade backliner. Pretty valuable in the flame element, but again, flame, like light, has combo time on their Agito weapons, so a little bit less important. Yeah, Daiko Kuten also with a flurry. I guess that's all I want to say about the characters on the banner. Let's talk about the question of summoning, sparking, the currency crunch that appears to be continuing, since I've seen a lot of discussion and frustration and sadness over that. I'm still of the mind that I would rather live in the world with sparking and reduced summoning income, personally, but seeing some of the outcry, well, it definitely leads me to think y'all should send in feedback if you are concerned about the lack of summoning resources. And I do think it could be a bit overboard, but as I said at the onset, I still want to wait and see what happens with this collaboration. It's possible by December we'll be back up to what we normally have. The estimates I've seen range from like a 70% drop to a 40% drop in our summoning income, which is pretty significant. Even the bottom end of that range is pretty significant. If it was like 10%, 20%, I would say, well, that's something I would probably not even notice, but if you look at my summoning currency, it's been kind of static since the last summoning session I did at the beginning of November. It's been a couple weeks. I certainly have a little bit more, but really nowhere toward a second spark. And I do think that's probably those theorizing that the reduction in summoning income may have to do with the advent of the sparking system. There's probably something to that, but I do think it's a little premature to make that connection. And I think if there is a connection, we'll probably hear more about it explicitly. One of the great things about Dragalia Lost is the dev team has been extremely responsive to player feedback over the past 2 years. So I can't imagine the dev team is blind to the fact that people are flooding their inbox with concerns about Wyrmite income, Rupee income, Eldwater income, in particular the Wyrmite and summoning tickets, I would say. So yeah, they probably know about it. They're probably formulating a response in the next feedback session with Okada. It might be somewhat of a generic response that doesn't make everybody happy. I think it's going to be sort of impossible to do that, but I do expect that they will acknowledge it, just like they acknowledge some of the Rupee shortcomings at some point. And so far this month, they've extended their hand a little bit in two ways. So remember, at the beginning of the month, we got free summons on the Gala Poseidon banner that they weren't originally planning on doing. The other thing is we got login bonuses for the defensive battles, which was like a generic login bonus, which we'd never had before, and there was some Wyrmite through that. Defensive battles in particular have always kind of had a lower Wyrmite income. But I think what's concerning players now is we've seen a facility event, a new facility event, Karina's, and now an old raid. Both of these seem to be diminished as far as the rewards that they offer. So the speculation is that because sparking increases the sort of generosity, the ease of getting a specific character, they've made it so there's less summoning currency available. I still think an alternative hypothesis yet to be disproven is the collaboration presents, right? And the anniversary presents. We have to see, are we going to get Princess Connect and get a lot of goodies or not so much? So I want to raise that as a possibility. I'm still willing to write it out a little bit longer. But also, it's possible we're just in a lower Wyrmite world, and let me talk a little bit about what I think on that. I feel that all preferences are valid, first of all. It doesn't, just because somebody likes to summon in short bursts, it doesn't mean that, there's anything wrong with that at all. Like, some players have a really strategic mindset and think that those who like to summon in shorter bursts are wasteful with their resources, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to enjoying the game. It's a game after all. So like, if that's what you prefer to do, then having less currency to do random summoning with, it's gonna sting. It's gonna hurt for sure. And for those who are better at stockpiling or prefer to play more in that way, which is kind of my wheelhouse, or at least I try to stockpile, especially lately. If you're more in that camp, then I think this only reinforces what you were already doing before, so it's less of a, it feels like less of a loss to you. And I think one of the big issues at play here is loss aversion. So people tend to feel the weight of losses, equivalent losses, more than the pleasure of gains. And when you take something away from somebody, they get really upset about it, generally. When you think back in Dragalia Lost history, it's always been called a very generous gacha game, right? From the beginning. And for me, this is just like par for the course. Like this type of thing, I'm really, like, it has no effect on my interest in Dragalia Lost. If I were here for the random summoning, that would be one thing, but like, I like this game well beyond just summoning. Like, summoning has actually become one of the things I don't really like to do that much at all, because at some point, with the amount of resources we were getting, you could clear out a lot of the characters to where when you're summoning, your sessions just don't feel good because you're getting so many duplicates and it wasn't really as enjoyable. But I remember back in the day, in the first, 5, 6, 7 months of Dragalia Lost, when Wyrmprints were in the summoning pool, back in the day, it used to cost 150 Wyrmite to do a single summon and 1500 to do a tenfold. That all got reduced out of nowhere, right? A sudden stroke of generosity was like, hey, we're taking out Wyrmprints. Some people had complained about it and sent in feedback. And, the cherry on top, also, it's only going to cost 120 Wyrmite or 1200 to do a single or a tenfold, respectively. I think there are a couple of issues at play. So let me get into those. One, maybe the calibration there was a little bit off when they made that change. I think that was the last really big summoning rework. They later did some other reworks, like taking out some of the 3 stars from the summoning pool, and they kind of refined their philosophy on banners, which changed a lot to where we now have more of a set rotation between Gala remixes and Galas every month, and a lot more platinums. If you've noticed, we have a ton of those. But yeah, I think maybe they miscalibrated a little bit, because it hasn't been too hard to get a lot of characters, so many characters that you don't even have enough Champions Testaments to build these characters. And I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most in Dragalia Lost in the early period, like the first 6 or 7 months, whatever it was before Wyrmprints were removed, was it was much more of a, like, you gotta make do with what you have type experience. It felt much more limited. There were a lot more constraints, like you couldn't control what Wyrmprints you had, you couldn't control what dragons you had, and that put certain aspects of the end game more at a wait-and-see pace. Like, there was a certain longevity to that. I think that's where we're headed now. And even though it feels bad to get things taken away, what I sense is that, one, there's a financial reason. You have to acknowledge that. Probably there's a financial reason to try get people to spend more money to summon more and get all the characters. But two, there is a sense that we've been able to summon at such a rate that, like, you never want for anything in Dragalia Lost. And sure, you can miss the characters that you want to get. That's one of the reasons I think sparking is a good addition. But I don't know, like that's been kind of my experience over the past year or so, is like we always have a large stockpile going into these showcases if you weren't somebody who was spending randomly. If you were actually kind of saving and being a little bit strategic, then you tended to have a lot of resources. So I think for players like that, now we're put in a position where every decision is a little bit more strategic and a little bit more thoughtful. And I don't really mind that, but if you are more in the camp of just spending randomly, it definitely sucks. But for me, when I think about it, like back in the day, like I had to make do with what I had. I never had a Verica, I never had a Vanessa, I never had a Mikoto, so I was Yuden, and I had Pele. That was my dragon for standard Midgard Swarmer. One of the complaints in the modern era of Dragalia Lost is the end game has become very condensed, and you clear it extremely quickly. I think one of the things we have nostalgia and wax poetic on is like, oh, you know, back in the day, like, I didn't clear standard Midgard Swimmer for 3 months or whatever because I had to scrape by and get like all this stuff and had to summon just the right dragon and the right character. And in contemporary Dragalia, it's like you just bulldoze everything. You steamroll everything. It's a shock when there's not, you know, a day one, minute one clear of some of this content. And so if we are moving toward a more limited summoning environment, you could potentially, one of the benefits potentially, is you could start to get some of that endgame sensation back, where you actually have to save and build up over time a lot more. I don't think it's a guarantee, and I think there's a risk that it leads to a lot more meta concentration when people do summon. That certainly seems like a very real possibility. In an ideal world, this new environment would mean players only summon for their favorites, and therefore there's more diversity because you only manage to pick up one character every few months. But I think realistically, whenever a good character comes out and YouTubers and Game Press and Discord is saying that's the new character everybody has to have, like, people are going to probably summon and spend their resources at that time rather than just go for, say, Noelle because that's their favorite. So yeah, I don't think it's going to work out in that ideal case scenario, but I don't know. Sometimes, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention? No, that's not the right one. Restrictions breed creativity? I mean, maybe that's appropriate in the case like this, but even then, I know that's not going to really appease people and make them happy. Everybody who feels disappointed about this is probably going to continue to feel disappointed. As for me, that's sort of my silver lining that I like to think about as far as how it'll change my approach to Dragalia Lost. And just a reminder that, like, we were in the Dark Ages for a long time in Dragalia before some of the changes were made that really amped up the generosity of the summoning system. And I would say, on net, even if we have a decline in summoning resources, we're probably still ahead of where we were at that time in the game compared to when we had Wyrmprints and everything in the summoning pool. So to me, it's like not that big of a shock or adjustment. It's just like, gotta roll with the punches type thing. That's sort of my attitude. But there was one other thing that I wanted to discuss, which I forgot to mention. I feel like I started off by saying, you know, one thing is this, and then I was going to say the second thing, but I can't remember at this point. Alright, Future Foundry here. I remembered what I wanted to say, so I decided to cut back in and add this after the fact. But besides summoning being something that kind of time-gated players as far as what content they could clear, the other thing that I meant to mention was a lot more players these days are using Wyrmite not for the purpose of summoning, but for the purpose of just playing the game more, refreshing their stamina, or refreshing their gather wings. And I think this is a loophole that the Dragalia dev team is sort of trying to close, or just may not be fully comfortable with, because you see with changes like the Wyrmprint change and how that affected Blazons, as well as in this raid rerun, not even having Wyrmite at all after a certain amount of Blazon boxes, I get the sense that they don't necessarily like how quickly people are burning through content because they're using Wyrmite to refresh. When you played during like the first year of Dragalia Lost, my impression was very few players used Wyrmite to play any extra amount than they normally would play in a given day. And since version 2.0, I've seen players that have gone crazy with the weapon bonuses. I feel like those are intended to be a long-term thing, and yet I've seen players who have completed all of them already. One of the reasons that the original progression of Dragalia Lost was more long-term was that there were no hustle hammers, so I see weapon bonuses as kind of like the Imperial Onslaught back in the day. There were no hustle hammers, so at some level, even if you spent Wyrmite to refresh and play additional, you would still have to wait until your Halidom facilities actually leveled up. And similarly with weapons, back in the day, you would still have to wait to get Twinkling Sand to actually craft additional weapons. So I think that at some level, the Dragalia dev team might not be comfortable with how quickly players are burning through the content that they intended to last a lot longer. And it's one of the reasons why some players feel like there's nothing to do in Dragalia Lost, is like, they're just completing everything at too rapid a pace, whether that's for summoning reasons or because they're using Wyrmite to just play the game more and more. And the final thing I forgot to say, which we'll talk about in just a second, was if you remember, Nintendo is the one that talked to Cyber Agent or Cygames to try and make the game more generous way back in the day around January 2019. So with that, I'll cut away to the rest of the conversation. That last bit will make more sense with some of the things that I say upcoming. Alright y'all, back to Past Foundry. I guess we've mused for quite a while on the topic of summoning resources and Wyrmite and summoning ticket reduction. I'd be curious to hear what you think about it in the comments below. As always, I know you'll keep it civil and keep it polite. I think that's my best advice to y'all if you want to send in feedback to the dev team. Remember, these are human beings at the end of the day. They have their own livelihoods, their own families, they're trying to do their best, and they're put in a position where, as much as they might want to love and admire their creation, this game, as a work of art or as a personal project, it is a corporate project at the end of the day. Right, I think that's actually one of the last things I wanted to mention was, so Dragalia Lost has been doing pretty well financially. Right now in the latest Cyber Agent reports, its revenues are combined with those of Princess Connect, so it's a little bit hard to discern how much revenue each individual game is getting, but it has been doing pretty well. I think the last time we heard about it was back in Q1 2019, I want to say. There was a controversy because a lot of games, almost all of Cygames' other properties, went down in revenue that quarter. Dragalia was the one that actually picked up and carried the growth for that quarter. And at the same time, Dragalia was blamed for a downward revision, I believe, in the revenue forecast for Cyber Agent, which is the parent company of Cygames. And the CEO of Cyber Agent has a pet project called Abima TV, and Abima TV has posted large losses repeatedly. Their latest quarter report mentioned how, oh, the losses are declining. There's less loss than there used to be, but Abima is still losing Cyber Agent money. And at the time, Dragalia was sort of the scapegoat for this CEO because Abima is like their personal project. So Dragalia has been through the ringer, man. I kind of feel like there is some internal pressure that like, you gotta get it together and make us even more money, because it's doing better than Shadowverse at this point. It's doing better than some of the Idol series that Cygames produces. At least it appears to be doing better in combination with Princess Connect, unless like 80% of that revenue is coming from Princess Connect. It seems to be doing quite well compared to some of the lesser Cygames franchises, but it's also not the juggernaut that Grand Blue Fantasy is. That has just completely overtaken everything, as all the spin-offs, all the franchising around it makes it an excellent game that Cygames has created, and universe, really. So I feel like Dragalia is still well afloat. I don't think that any of these concerns about the revenue will necessarily affect that. I think the concerns burn the most if you're strictly free to play. And as a player who spent some money in the past, I'm probably going to go free to play for a while. I'll be honest, if there's a really tempting alt or character that I really want, I might be willing to spend on it. But I'm right now saving my Wyrmite for like Pietro alt, Eleonora alt, or a Nadine alt. And those are like the 3 characters that will get me to summon. Otherwise, I'm kind of going limited showcases only and Gala Dragons only at this point forward. But yeah, I don't know. I think Dragalia is actually doing a lot better than people may realize. Having said that, it's still not the breakout hit. It's still not on the Switch. It's still not released globally. So I feel like there's room to grow and room to improve. Hopefully, some of the feedback you send in to the Dragalia dev team will be constructive, will lead them to improve as far as the summoning currency goes. And better yet, let's hope that with the collaboration with Princess Connect, we just get an influx of tenfold vouchers, single tickets, Wyrmite, all of that good stuff. I hope you've enjoyed this more quieted and lower temperature discussion about this topic. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you as always for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.